It's my pleasure today to be joined by Adam Nelson, running for House of Representatives, District 21, Seat A, and that's down in Meridian. So, without any further ado, Adam, thanks for joining me. What's your life story that's brought you to this point where you're on the ballot?
Um, Brian, thanks for having me. Just sitting here at the Speedway doing, excuse me, doing my Wednesday chores. Um, Life story is pretty simple. I was born and raised in Boise, South Boise, 5 Mile Victory area. We lived there most of my life. My family ran the Meridian Speedway, and so we traveled back and forth to Meridian on the old 2-lane road there called Overland. Um, I went to Amity Elementary, West Junior High, and Bora High School. And by the time I had got married and had a kid, and about that time, it's about 1995. I moved to Meridian because I was racing. I loved cars. My girlfriend, who then became my wife, lived in Meridian, and everything we just did was right here in Meridian. So I've actually been in town since '95, um, and I don't even know how many years that is now. I'd have to do some math, but it's a long time. But I think my wife and I moved to Oregon for 2 years. We ran a speedway over there called Douglas County Speedway, and we moved back in 2009. So we were there from 7 to 2009, and we got the contract to run the Meridian Speedway with our partnership group here. Um, and so we brought the business back into the family, and we've been right here at Meridian Speedway um, with this as our day job, for the last 16 years. So. What brought me to run. A couple of years ago, I ran for a city council seat here in Meridian, um, mostly just out of patriotism and wanting to do my part and seeing how things would go. And we got really, really close on that run. Um, um, mostly, um, mostly after that, just kind of stepped away a little bit. Obviously, I'm like most Americans. I don't watch. I watch the news just to see what the news isn't, and um, I keep track of things. And it just seemed like we were coming up on this November election, and some I talked to some people, and they were talking about the primary coming up, and that we had some candidates that technically weren't operating as a conservative, and so I thought I would just jump into the race and see if I couldn't maybe help fix one of those seats. I mean, obviously, you can tell I'm no regular politician. I'm just a regular, ordinary guy that runs a business, but I'm really concerned about the state of Idaho. I'm concerned about the city of Meridian, and by default, that means I'm concerned about the state of America. So I jumped in and um, learned um, a lot more things about the candidates for all the seats, not only seat 21A, which is the one I'm running for here in Meridian, but it was just interesting to see how many of the people in the circles that I run in aren't paying attention. So I just thought it was a great way to help people um, maybe see a little clearer what's going on.
So, as a longtime resident, small business owner, especially a sort of business that Speedway, you're going to attract a lot of folks who just come for the entertainment or the participants or whatever. You I'm sure you've had conversations with a wide range of people. I'm looking at the map of District 21. It's essentially, downtown Meridian with a little bit of the outskirts there. What are you hearing from people? What are their concerns, or what are their priorities, or what do they want to see out of the legislature?
You know what? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure that everybody that I talk to fully grasps what the legislature can and can't do. Obviously, the biggest concern that everybody has is pretty national, and just trying to help people recognize what things can be done in the legislature to help ease some of the national problems, like the illegal immigration and government spending, and all those things can all be quelled or mitigated to some extent right here in Idaho, and we certainly shouldn't be adding to those big problems. But I think the biggest thing is just helping people understand that a lot of it is about their money and their tax money, the money they're paying in, and 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 that's great. Put the money in a pot, but what are they spending it on, and why are they spending it on things, and do and do the people that I talk to even understand what their money is being spent on, whether they agree with the expenditure or not. They're just not, some people just aren't paying attention. And that's really, I think, the biggest focus for me has been is just having those conversations with regular Idahoans, in my district, and the people that are sharp on politics and sharp on um, the things that the legislature does or doesn't do, and those people have it down. They know what they're doing, and I just feel like that there's a bigger there's a bigger agenda when it comes to what I'm after, and that's basically just trying to help people understand that we need we need to make a choice now um, for some of these seats here in this primary, because once we get to that general election, they're gonna pick red or blue, and the problem is most people think when they pick red they're getting red, and sometimes they're getting blue
Hmm.
when they check a red box, and that's not fair. Like, it's not fair to have people saying they're one thing and doing another, and that's what I'm trying to help educate the people that I talk to.
So, what are some of the issues where you believe that the incumbent has not done a good job representing your communities?
Well, I mean, he voted for what's the launch bill? I mean, um, that's fine, but I just feel like it's not really the taxpayer's job to fund education for post 12th grade people. Like, what? Why are we why are we funding somebody else's postgraduate schooling, and not focusing on our K through 12 with that $80 million? I mean, uh, and you don't even have to get into the details of it all. It's $80 million. Why are we spending $80 million on somebody else's postgraduate studies? It just makes no sense to me. Um, and I just feel like that money could be either better spent or not spent at all. When it comes to social expenditures like that, I think as far as the budget goes, and the maintenance and infrastructure, and there's a place for all that. But when it comes to um, this DEI deal, I mean, we're voting to fund that, and I just don't understand. I don't think that I don't think that the American people would want their money. I shouldn't say the American people. The people right here in my district don't want their money spent on that. And if they do, uh, they they would certainly be doing that through the Democratic side, because it's definitely not a conservative Republican value, right?
Mhm.
Important to me, and if anything's talked about, I think I can usually go look at it and go, does it fit? Does it fit 1, 2, 3? It's an okay deal. But if we're raising taxes or spending more money, the government's getting involved in our business. I mean, those things right there is instantly not a conservative value, in my opinion.
Well, one of the conversations I've been having with folks throughout the state in this series is about the role of government. Some people say we should just go back to how the founders created it. It's just limited to protecting life, liberty, and property. But if you look at the last 100 years, government's gotten involved in things. There are even people in the Republican Party now who say that the government can and should do certain things to help people. And obviously, that's the rationale behind the launch grant. You give money to high school students. It helps them. It helps businesses. It helps our economy. But one thing I've noticed is that for every time the government spends money like that, the people who benefit from it will always support it. So if you're a high schooler and you're getting free money to go get some workforce training, then you say, "Hey, that's a great deal." If you're a business, it's a great deal. I don't have to pay to train my own workers. So how do we roll back government? How do we, pull back that spending when there's so many people who are now reliant on it, who are benefiting from it.
Well, unfortunately, that I think the only way we're gonna be able to do anything about it is to rip the Band-Aid off and quell it. But at minimum, you have to have like-minded people that will slowly roll those kinds of projects, that kind of spending back. I excuse me. Um, I, I don't foresee an easy way other than to just knock it off. Like it's been such a slow burn to get to this point that going back on it is certainly going to be tough, especially if you have to go get the votes of the people that are benefiting from the free
Mhm.
money and the free projects. Um, like I just think there's more people right here in Meridian. I think there's more people in Idaho that would rather work for what they get and work hard for their money and spend it on the things that they want to. And I just can't imagine that the majority wants the socialistic view of everybody gets something and everybody's paying for it, but nobody gets to decide except for these 100 people in the government. I don't fully comprehend how we got here. And obviously that's because I'm a product of the same education that the rest of us have, and some of us just start looking at things through a different lens at some point, and um, hopefully it's not when some of these kids are we don't have to wait for some of these high school graduates to get to 50 and go, well, that was dumb. No wonder I'm this way because I got all this free stuff and I didn't have to work for anything. I mean, my kids go out and they've got a job and they paid for their own college, and if they wanted to go to college, and ones that didn't want to went and learned a trade, and they went and they took it under their own belt and did it the American way versus the handout way. And I just think that's what a lot of these programs are, and they're conditioning people to want more and more. I mean, once you get a free banana, you want two free bananas, right? I mean that's the way the monkeys at the zoo work.
Yeah, it's sometimes I wonder if we've already passed the point of no return there. If people are just you know expecting other people to pay for things. That kind of leads me into the next subject, and that's the school system, which perhaps is inculcating that worldview. Because obviously our Constitution says that the legislature must provide for a free and uniform system of public schools, and so the government funds it. And then if anything goes wrong, well, they just need more money. I mean, if things
Right.
start going wrong in your business, you can't just raise your prices and expect people to keep coming. You've got to fix the problem. Whereas in a something government funded like public schools, if things go wrong, if students aren't achieving, if they're having problems, then will they just go to the government and ask for more money or go to their local taxpayers for a bond or a levy? So, what do you see? What should we do with the public school system? How do we reform it? How do we make it better? And also, what do you see in the realm of school choice, money following the students, which has been a big debate lately?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one, I think obviously I agree. One of my best friends is a school teacher right here in Meridian, so we talk a lot about how much teachers make and what they make and then what they do for their money, and I certainly believe that there needs to be a little bit more of a performance based compensation system for teachers. I mean, obviously, if they're doing well, their students are doing well. Um, that I think that there's an avenue there where we could probably entice better teachers and maybe discourage the bad teachers to leave the system. Basically because they're not making enough money. It's no different than the law of supply and demand. School choice. I mean, my wife and I, we talk about this from time to time, and um, that we're all paying X amount of dollars into the system so our kids can go to this free school, right? We're all paying this much in, and the people that already have kids and they've left, they're paying in. The people that don't have any kids, they're paying in. So we're all paying into the system. But if we don't want to use the public school system, which I think is could be a good thing again, but obviously we have some curriculum issues and what are we learning? What are we teaching? I mean, Like, can we balance a checkbook? Do we know what a checkbook is? I mean, there's many things that I think that the school system is not doing for kids, even though there are a lot of positives. But obviously, I believe that if I'm going to take my kid out of the public system and go put them in a private school, or I want to tutor them or do a homeschooling scenario, I think that my expenditure to the public system should be credited, or I should be able to use it elsewhere. But uh, it's such a tough thing because nobody there's not a lot of transparency, and if there is transparency in what we're buying and spending through the school system, it's not easy for regular people like me to go look it up or spend the time doing the research to go find it. I mean, we're busy, right? We have jobs, we have car payments, we have insurance payments. We're trying to figure out where our health insurance come from. We're trying to find out all these things, and we just don't have time to go learn the things of what the government's doing with our money, whether it's in the school system or not. And so I just feel like if people understood clearly what was happening, I think the choices would be very simple. Like for most people in Meridian, most people in Idaho would all choose the same thing, and that would be the common sense aspect to government. The answer, like you said, why is the answer always, oh, we need more money? Like once you give the government some money, they never give it back. and and is everybody paying the same amount? And should they? I mean, those are the questions when it comes to school. And I just feel like I don't know why there's this big battle over school choice. Like if somebody doesn't want to use whatever elementary school or whatever high school that their house happens to be in the district of, they want to send them to a private school, they should not have to send their money um, to the state of Idaho public school system. They should be able to retract it, spend it on what they want, on the schooling they want for their own children, make their own choice. But what happens? What happens to that money? The kids are done. Okay, does this, and when I say that money, the annual payment, the monthly payment, whatever you're paying, however you're paying your Idaho taxes. I mean, I feel like it's just so convoluted, Brian, that it sometimes confuses me, and I have to sit and think about what my answer is really going to be, because common sense says it should be an easy fix, rip the band-aid off. But I know that comfort, people's comfort level sometimes is just status quo. And I think that's the hardest part of trying to get people to look at different ways of doing things. Is they just get comfortable knowing that they don't have any money because the state took a lot of it, or the federal government, or the banks, or the credit card companies, or whoever. Everybody's taxing us everywhere, and people don't even know why. Or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Well,
yes, I ramble sometimes. Sorry.
no, it's fine. I like I want to hear what you have to say. One thing you mentioned there is that regular people just don't have the time to dig into these things, whether it's what's going on in their local school districts, which ostensibly people are supposed to be responsible for that and elect school board members and
Correct.
hold them accountable, but also in the legislature. And like you said, what the government's spending our money on. The legislature hears hundreds of budget bills, or over 100 budget bills each year. And the actual budget book is countless pages long. And as a legislator, you would be part-time, no staff. You'd walk in there on day one and be surrounded by lobbyists on one side, and then the executive branch staff on the other, who are full-time, and they have armies of clerks who are dedicated to figuring out how to get what they want. Um, how do you represent your constituents, the people of your district, in that environment? How do you stay grounded? How do you um, push through the agenda of the people who sent you there?
Um, it yeah, it sounds very intimidating. But I think, I mean, in the end, I think I compare, if you have this bill and it's X amount of pages long, obviously you're going to have to sit and spend the time dissecting through it and trying to figure out what's really going on. And I liken it no different to some of the rule books that we use in car racing. We have 15, 16 different types of cars. They all have different rules. This car can have the purple radiator. This car can have the green radiator, that kind of thing. We wrote all of those rules and we publish all of those rules, but throughout the course of daily business, I don't have all those rules memorized. So I find myself over and over pulling out that book and going through those rules and digging through and looking at the periods, looking at the commas, looking at the things that on paper when you read it really fast means something versus when you actually read it and decipher what it means. Um, I spend a lot of time doing that currently, and I liken the idea of going through some of these bills and trying to figure out where the trick is in it. And because I'm a little bit that way. I feel like if somebody's writing something, somebody's getting something either for themselves or for somebody or for something, and in every case, um, the people of Idaho are paying the note on it. So how would I stay grounded? I think I would stay grounded because I would look at it the same as I look at some of the other things I do in my own business. Is you just have to block the time away. You have to get serious and you have to get through the reading and make the notes and then go back to those items that maybe caused you question or concern and then go back and really see if it meant what you thought it meant the first pass through. So I obviously we're a seasonal business here. We're closed 6 months out of the year, so I feel like the time to be able to donate or provide to the people in my district is there. Like I think I have it. I'm not stuck at my job from 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, hoping for the weekend to get over. So and even during the summer, we have a great staff here. So I think I think that's really the one reason when my wife and I talked about running for this seat, any chance that we won the nomination to go to the general, that we could 100% don't designate the time to do the job for the people. Because here's the thing, like I voted for a guy that I thought was a red R and had conservative values. That's what it said on this is what I voted for. And then I haven't looked at it for a year. Shame on me. Shame on everybody else who doesn't. And I go look at a list of votes, and I can find a number of them that I disagree with. And I expected him to have conservative
Mhm.
values, and um, and I just feel like I'm in that spot, Brian, where like I want to go donate some time and some effort in a place where I feel like I didn't do my job the first time. I didn't go look at the guy I voted for the last time because I believed everything that we were told, and there was no record. Well, now I have a record. I can see it. I know he didn't do what I wanted him to do. Shame on me. You know what I mean? But I think we have an opportunity to fix that in a couple of seats. Is it enough seats? I don't know. But that's how I ended up here. Like
Mhm.
like I'm not articulate. I'm not the statesman. I'm not the spokesman. But I'm gonna read through stuff, and I'm gonna if I'm elected to do so, I'm gonna vote things on my values, and I hope the people that have similar values to me, um, vote for me in this upcoming election.
Well, you have it, when it comes to campaigning, you have it harder than a lot of people because, you're in a three-way race, which means you have to
Mhm.
um, tell the voters that you would be a better choice than the incumbent, but then also that of the two challengers, you're also the better choice. How are you distinguishing yourself in that regard, and how are you communicating that?
Well, I mean, I don't even know that I'm targeting that message when I'm having conversations with people. I'm just trying to be genuine, and I know that that having three people in this race is probably favorable to the incumbent. I don't understand how that. I think that's a product of our system. I think the election system is kind of broken because we just default again those people that don't go figure out. The one thing we know about is the incumbent voting record. We have that. Okay, then you got two other choices. Um, maybe we're saying similar things. I don't know. But the thing is, I'm just trying to be genuine. I know that I don't really like people to push me around. If I believe in something, I stand for it, um, popular or not. And I think that most people, when we talk, I think they can see that. I'm not saying that the the other challenger um, has issues with any of that. I'm not running against the other challenger, Brian. I'm running against the incumbent, and the other challenger likely has the same issues I have with the incumbent. Um, I feel like when the Ada County Republicans put out a whole um, what do they call it? Not a referendum. Um, they put out a
Resolution.
resolution, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put out a whole resolution and it's what, 69 vote. Yeah, we don't want this guy. 69 out of 70. One person says yes. Like if the whole Ada County Republican Committee puts out a resolution saying this guy is not good, he is not a Republican. He's doing Democratic things, hiding as a Republican. Like, I mean, when they say that, I think, how could anybody even consider that? So, am I running against the incumbent? Yes. Am I running against the other challenger? Not necessarily, but I think that probably both the challengers are way better choices than the incumbent. I hope that I'm uh, genuine and honest enough with people that they'll choose me. Um, but I just really feel like that seat is suspect right now, and if we put him through this primary, he's going to be on the ballot in the general, and that's going to be the end of it. We're going to have that guy that doesn't do conservative Republican things with our money. We're going to have that guy for the next 2 years, and I just don't think that's acceptable.
Hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question. I get off on a
Yeah.
tangent. I
No,
apologize.
that's uh, switching over to a couple of the issues. Uh, how about guns? Everybody in Idaho likes guns, right? Everybody supports the Second Amendment.
Sure,
Everybody
sure.
wants
I got
to.
mine right here.
Everyone wants to take a campaign picture holding a rifle. Uh,
Yeah, I keep
what's
mine under my shirt. I don't show it off.
So what's your what's your stance on that? Is our current gun laws in Idaho, are they acceptable? Should they be you know should they be changed in any way? Obviously, just this last session, Senator Scott Herndon pushed forth a bill that fixed a kind of a loophole where private entities could lease out public land and then restrict the Second Amendment on that land, and that had been an issue. So they closed that. What about red flag laws, uh, background checks, all those common sense things that they always talk about. What's your thought on the
Well, I
whole
think
arena?
I mean I can get right down to the simplicity of it. Is any rule or law or like any any restriction is an infringement, right? And the Constitution's pretty clear that that it says shall not be infringed. So I think I I like I don't know how I'm a big 2A guy. I know that's our and that's our thing in Idaho. Even the Democrats pretending to be Republicans are 2A guys. They know that they have to be a 2A guy, right? So I think any of the limitations that we're putting on um, ammunition or uh, accessories, in any of the thing, I think all of those are an infringement to the Second Amendment, and I think they're all just a stepping stone that the fake Republicans slash Democrats slash liberals slash socialists are trying to do to just take the guns away and from the American people in the future. And people laugh at that sometimes, because it sounds really conspiracy based or whatever. But in reality, you can just look all across the country and see the different the different ways that different states deal with the Second Amendment and regulations and restrictions, which there shouldn't be any, but how they deal with it and where they are as far as uh, the I guess the progress of trying to eliminate um, firearms in the hands of the citizens. So it's not really a complicated issue for me, but
Well,
I,
what
I know they like to trickle it down and start talking about this thing and this thing, like it means something different than over here where like it's not allowed, right? So
there was a bill this last session. It passed the House, but did not get a hearing in the Senate that would have given uh, guaranteed the right of teachers and school staff to carry concealed on school property if they had an enhanced carry license. And obviously, like I said, it passed the House, but the Senate State Affairs chairman did not even give it a hearing. They were a lot of the debate against it was saying that, well, we need to make sure that they have more training so that nothing bad happens if they pull it out or things like that. But currently, school districts can decide and school administrators can decide to make their schools gun-free zones and not allow any of their staff to carry. What are your thoughts on that?
well, obviously training is good, but I think I mean the teachers should be carrying sidearms if they feel like that's what they need to do to protect the students, and if they're in an environment uh, where it feels unsafe, then there's no reason that they shouldn't be. Um, Whether the school system gets to decide whether they do or they don't, I don't know. The school system is a public entity, and it is, in my opinion, is bound by the same rules that we all are in the Constitution of the United States. So, like, I mean, I think create policies, whether it's constitutionally acceptable or not, that's debatable. But I don't even understand why schools would not want them to. I mean, I just it's such a common sense. It's such a common sense factor to me. Um, I mean, they'll put up metal detectors and they'll put up all this stuff so other people so the kids in bad areas can't bring in weapons, but we can't have somebody in the school defending our innocent kids that are what I mean that are at school. So yeah, I clarify the question because I think I ended up trying to go two ways with that.
No, it sounds like you mainly answered it.
Uh,
You know, the
I struggle. I just struggle because they try. When I say they, I just mean the government in general or the politicians in general. Tr I feel like just try to confuse you with the shell game of, oh, well, they should be able to have it as long as they have the right training. Well, then who gets to determine what the training is, right? And then, oh, they should have it, but they can't do it if it's concealed. And it's just a shell game. It's like we're either going to protect our kids or we're not. And then in the end, if we're sending our kids to a school that feels unsafe, that leads us back to the other scenario where why is our kids in that school? Why don't we take our $5,000 or our $10,000 or $50, whatever we're putting in, and move those kids to a safe school? Like, I just feel like it's six of one, half a dozen of the other, and we end up with all these little things that make us debate this little topic versus versus the real topic, and that
Mhm.
is everybody who's a citizen and not a felon should be able to carry a weapon. Like it's common sense. But now that TV makes them all scary, like on TV, you watch a show on anything, and there's a gun laying on the ground, and they're like, oh, my goodness, like it's going to jump out. Like there's just this misconception to the programming that all of us have had since we were little kids and in elementary school, Brian, and I mean, I can just at 50, I can see it so clearly how over time they've just trained us to be scared of something that is so simple and so protected. Like that's what keeps us safe is the fact that we can arm ourselves, whether it's a gun or a knife or a hammer, right? Like the Second Amendment is not just guns. And so I find it tough that the school system gets in there and starts manipulating the way we're talking about. I just,
Yeah,
yeah, I, sorry.
yeah. I mean,
It's,
I'm sure we
it's
could talk
sometimes
about that for hours.
frustrating to me. It's sometimes frustrating, Brian. Like common sense is common sense. And where is everybody's common sense? Like the people I talk to, they all like, yeah, that's common sense. But they're not the people making choices for us because they're not going to a primary and voting. And that's the thing is I feel like the system doesn't help regular people in life get to this important election. Oh, they're going to talk about it, put stickers on your forehead about going to the one in November. But the one in November, some of those choices for these seats in Idaho are done, and they're probably the wrong choice if you believe in the things like a guy like I believe
Why do you think it is that people with common sense don't show up to vote?
in. I that's a great question, actually. Um, I think people have the common sense when they're posed with a question or challenged to give an answer, right? I think, but I think on a Tuesday, if they're not listening to the radio on the way in or the way out, which we don't anymore, everybody listens to something else, like their phones or whatever. And there's no local news available on any of those outlets. And so if you're not listening to that and it's 5 o'clock and you're on your way home, I think people just think that it's Idaho and they're going to make the majority of the people think one way, check the red box, and they're going to go check the red box. And I think they just skip. Maybe this primary is going to be different. I think there's a lot on the line. I think people are sick of all this inflation. They're sick of the illegal immigrants. They're sick of all of this stuff nationally. And maybe, just maybe, that common sense will kick in and we'll get some people to the primary to come and put good candidates in the general. Um, I just, for whatever reason, I just think the time of year for these primaries is really, really tough. I mean, we can go look at the results of many of the past ones, and they're very, very discouraging. And I mean, I can say what 6 years ago I didn't go vote in a primary. I was too busy trying to start a business and get my kids out of school and graduated. And like we just life is so busy, Brian. I think people just see that as the one thing that it's okay to skip, and then maybe I think have issues with it the day after and wish they wouldn't have, but knew that they made that choice. And hopefully this year people are making the right choice to just flood the ballot boxes on primary day because, generally we know um, how most of the results are going to pan out in the general election when it comes to red and blue in Idaho, right?
Yeah, looking back at the 2 years ago, the current incumbent, he won with only less than 39% of the vote. He only won by about 60 votes in a four-way race in the primary, and only 7,400 people actually voted from your district. And then, of course, by the general, being a Republican district, he easily won that. So, not only does it matter, who you vote for in the primary, it matters that you show up because it will make a difference. Some of these primary races are razor thin, and a couple dozen more people show up to vote, and it could flip a different way.
And I would argue that the primary is probably more important than the general. I mean,
Oh,
obviously
definitely.
you got to get out to the general, but right now, I mean, when you're looking at he ran against four people, won by 60 votes. We're gonna race three people, and we're talking 7,500 people get to decide how that House seat votes on spending our money,
Hmm.
and we already know how he's going to vote. I think that race there was no incumbent in that race. They were all. Is that correct? Yeah, they were all open seats. I guess is how you'd say it. But 75. I mean, that's what I'm going to be looking at on May 22nd. Was there 7,500 people again, or did we get 10,000 or 12,000 people to come and come and vote? And um, if the margin isn't big enough for victory, at least I think at least what I'll be able to say is like, well, hopefully, 4 or 5 thousand of those people, we were instrumental in helping them recognize there's a primary, and not only just getting there, but before you get there, figure out what the three people are about. Yeah, they're all red. They all got little red R's, but what are they really about, right?
Just to
And
just to
that
drive home that point, 2 years ago, the current incumbent wins by about 60 votes. Launch grant, House Bill 24 last year, which we already talked about, it passes by one vote in the House. And so, every single person who voted for it is essentially the deciding vote. Had any of them voted differently, it would have gone very differently. So,
Right.
your vote as a voter counts, and because your vote as a legislator counts.
Right. And I think, I mean, I think I think that's really the most important thing. I mean, there's plenty of scorecards out there, and I've looked at all of them from all the different places, and you can, I mean, anybody can get out there and look at any uh, U.S. Constitution scorecards, state of Idaho scorecards. So there's a lot of places that track all these votes, and they mark it down with a red and a green, and you can go in your district and look at your Senate seat. You can go look at your House seat. You can look at everything and see how they voted on specific things, and it may be green, 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 and seven of those items are red, meaning potentially it's not the way a conservative would vote. And then you can go read about that bill and go, yeah, why did he vote to spend our money on that particular thing or this particular thing? And I challenge people at the Speedway every day to go look. I'm not trying to sell you on me. I'm trying to sell you on going and get your own information. Go look at the past. I mean, the one thing you don't have on me is a record. You have me running my mouth and saying I'm not going to do those things. But the one thing you have on the guy that I'm running against is you have a record, and they can go look at it and decide whether they're for um, any one of the topics. I'm not going to bring it up any of them because you're going to ask me about them, and I don't want to be prepared when I do. But I could probably go find 7 votes that James Petsky voted the opposite of the way I would have, and in one case, as you suggested, that one vote would have not passed the uh, the launch bill through the House at that particular time. It doesn't mean they're going to not send it through again, but it would have saved us $80 million.
Mhm.
One vote, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, what was the DEI funding Idaho education? That was $3.8 billion. $3.8 billion. We're going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion funding in the Idaho education system. Like, what is that about? 3.8 billion? Come
I
on.
think yeah, I think that's the whole education budget, but there are several
Right.
tens of millions of that are dedicated
Yeah,
to
there
DEI
that
positions.
was the budget, right? But it's the DEI funding inside it. It
Mhm.
just like what that is not ABC 1, 2, 3. That's school. ABC one through three. Reading, writing, arithmetic. History's pretty good, right? I just don't know why we're spending that kind of money um, to put forward those social agendas. You know what I mean? Like in the criminy in the um, candidates forum a couple of weeks ago, one of the questions was we were still talking about men's boys and girls bathrooms in schools. I
Mhm.
mean, it's like what this like there's just sometimes these topics just never go away. And what was that? I was 4 years ago in 2021. That was a big topic at city council, and it's just like what you got a boys' room and a girls' room, and pretty much every freaking school now has a family-friendly room. If they can't decide what they are, why use that one. Why are we letting um, boys in the girls' room and girls in the boys' room? It just turns into these common sense things that I really struggle with, Brian, because I know the politicians want to straighten the tie and say the 15 sentence thing that makes it all right with everybody, but it's not all right. It's you know
Yeah, with that the whole idea of common sense, it's not so common anymore. You have a very loud, outspoken, militant, far left wing. They call people like you and me radical extremists
Mhm.
because we believe that boys are boys and girls are girls. But really, the radical ones are the ones on the far left who are saying that no, boys can be girls and girls can be boys. It's all up to how you feel that day, and everyone else has to accept that. Um,
Right.
and
Right. And that's really the sticker. I mean, that's the sticker. It's like it's America. Be what you want to be. You want to be a cat, be a cat. Go do it. But don't make me pet the cat. I don't care about the cat. Leave the cat at home. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. And I think most people have that opinion. Like, we're very accepting. Like, yes, I mean, there's 105 people that work at Meridian Speedway. Like, there's a very diverse group crop of people that work here, and they're all my friends, and we all get along great. We all know where we stand, but I don't make them pack a gun around with them, and they don't make me dye my hair purple. You know what I mean? Like we just leave it alone. Go do your thing and quit pushing on me, and certainly quit asking me to spend money so you can afford the purple hair dye.
Yeah. The problem I think comes with that radical left and their friends in the media. They put a lot of pressure on and say that if and if you disagree with us, then you're not compassionate, you're not kind, you're mean, and people bend to that. We see on the floor
Yeah.
Republicans, including one Republican from your district, not your opponent, get very emotional when talking about some of these issues because I think they want to be very compassionate, and that compassion leads to, I think, pretty awful places.
Yeah, I mean, you won't see me crying uh, in any scenario, um, unless my own cat were to pass away. I might bawl at that. But other than that, like I'm passionate. I'm passionate. I am also compassionate. Um, I'm very open to all kinds of different types of people and um, agendas and lifestyles. I don't really care. But like in the end, the legislature is about money. We're here to save money, not spend money. Let's get the taxes lowered. They talked about how many 0.007% they lowered this tax or that tax at the last at the candidates forum that I was at. And I was like point zero, like a credit card company charges 3% of every transaction that we make, whether it's a debit card or credit card, they charge 3%. And we're bragging about lowering the state taxes by 0.001 or whatever the number was. I'm just paraphrasing. Um, and that passes off as tax reduction or lowering taxes. Like, but it's the thing that they say, the politician types, that's what they say. Is like, oh, when I voted for this thing to lower your taxes. Well, what did you lower it? I mean, what are we talking about pennies? Are we talking about dollars? And I learned some stuff about the new way that they're figuring the budget, through the state of Idaho, and they're separating maintenance versus I call it social agenda items, but I don't know exactly what the term is. But one of the questions was, do you agree with the old way of creating a budget and voting on a budget, or the new way? And in the end, it was funny because what I took out of it was, is the new way, all it does is separate the necessary from the unnecessary, or what I'm considering unnecessary, because I haven't really read everything that's in the unnecessary side. But it was like, okay, here's the maintenance items. And the real struggle, evidently, the House was having, or some of the people were having, was how to determine what was a maintenance item and what wasn't. Like that was obviously a thing. And I did a little more research on it. But in the end, I was really thinking about that. And I thought, well, at least somehow somebody's trying to separate these items. And I think in the end, like separating them and deciding what we're going to spend on those items, Brian, is great. But in the end, if you got them separated, that you've pretty much you've put a pigtail right in the unnecessary items, right? Like it'd be interesting to see the full list of that at some point. How that breaks down. But they were really what the discussion was about, was whether the new way of determining budgetary items for expenditures on the budget versus the old way was better or worse, or it needed something else. And some people thought that we needed a hybrid of the two, because one was not as good as the other. But it's all things that I'm really interested to go tackle and go look at, because those things interest me. um, Running a seasonal business like the Speedway, it really puts you in a spot to where I liken it to like the way some teachers are paid, right? Like they they work 6 months and they have a choice, or they used to have a choice, whether they got all their money in the 6 months or they got it spread out. Well, we get our business is open 6 months, so we have to do all of our business in half a year, and we got to pay our bills for a full year. And
Mhm.
so we have to be very budget minded through the whole scenario. Like even when you feel like you're flush and there's a surplus, you can't spend on arbitrary things, because you have to be able to pay the bills when you're closed. And I think that that attitude or that style of business could lend itself to looking at budgetary items a little differently maybe than some people that are not necessarily uh, have to operate a business where that, you know, that's important. Does that make sense? I'm
Mhm.
trying to make sense of it. So the more I sit here and ramble, the more I sit here and think about how easy I think that um, that government could be if we just got rid of half of the government. And I know that I know that it'll be the quote, but you know, reduction in government, limited government. That's where we need to be. And like, do you remember? I tell people the story all the time. I remember when I was a little kid, we'd go to a rest area or on the highway, you'd pull over, or you'd go to the DMV and you do something, and they were always a cinder block square building with a flat roof. Like buildings were utilitarian. Why were they utilitarian? Because they were affordable, right? It was budgetary. You spent as little as possible to get the most function out of a building, right? Now we have these Taj Mahals. We have all this architecture and columns and lights and fountains and you know what I mean. There's all this stuff in all of these county, state, city buildings. You know, like it's almost just showing off the grandeur of spending the people's money on
Hmm.
stuff. I would rather spend my money on my house than my money on a house where the politicians go to read a bill, you know? And so those are really tough items for me. They're definitely not hot topics or anything, but it just lends to um it just lends, I guess, Brian, to getting to how did I get to this point? Why am I even here? Like, you know, can I do, you know, many people think it'd be great if I was in there in the house and just being that one voice that was different than all the others. But a lot of other people are like, man, you can't beat the system. And the system is the incumbent, right? Right. Like that's the system. But I think the Ada County Republicans got it right. And I'm hoping that's a good I think it's a good step in the right direction, and I hope that this primary um, proves them correct.
Well, we're actually getting close to an hour here. I'm sure we could talk about, some of these things for forever, but I mean, you've
I'm
got
trying
things
to
to
shut
do.
up, brother. I
So,
am.
you know, uh, do you have any issues that you really want to cover that we haven't covered yet? And beyond that, just closing thoughts.
I think my main issue, Brian, and we've talked about it. I don't really have any specific hardline issues because I think they're all. I think every issue that comes up is legitimate to some party, some faction, and I think every issue needs to be considered and weighed. My biggest issue is people running as a conservative, getting elected, and then not doing conservative things. That's my biggest issue. That's why I'm running in this election. Um, like I said, I'm not the guy that's going to be out there winning over hearts and minds with smiles and kissing babies. I'm just the guy that I can't stand when these guys convince us that they're one thing and then go and do another. And it's more and more and more rampant. And it's not something that we thought was a thing in Idaho. Most people think in Idaho that, you know, we're full of conservative values, and that's why our state is as great as it is because it's conservative. But it's creeping and creeping into expenditures that are unacceptable. And so that's my biggest issue. I think many of the hot topics of the day I think are just as strong of issues. But if you haven't figured out where I stand on most of them by now, then you're probably not following very along very close. You know what I mean? And I would just, I guess if anybody's watching this or listening or transcribing notes from this interview, I would just encourage you to go find the votes for seat 21A. Go find those votes, go look at those items, and determine whether that's what you would have done from your living room or your kitchen, because that's really what sending someone like me to the state house is, for me to go sit in that desk. So, um, and make those choices that you would make from your living room or kitchen, or you know, or sitting in a restaurant having a discussion with your best friend or whoever. You know, when you're talking about how silly things are that you see on the news or you read in the paper. This is your chance to go and straighten out at least one seat.
Adam Nelson, running for State House of Representatives in District 21, Seat A. Thank you.
Brian, thanks so much.